The sky had changed that day long ago when the people of Earth first looked up and saw the stars moving in ways they could not explain. A light brighter than the moon slid across the darkness. It was silent. No sound reached the surface, but every sensor on every satellite screamed as something large and unknown entered Earth space. At first the world panicked. Governments called emergency meetings. News stations shouted across every screen. Something was coming, something not made by human hands. And then it appeared above the planet, a ship shaped like no other, smooth like glass but hard like stone, black as night, yet glowing with blue light around its edges. No weapons, no shields raised. It simply hovered in orbit, watching. The first message came through a strange signal. Not words, not sounds, but pictures. Simple images. A sun, a planet, then another ship, then fire, then darkness. It was a warning. Earth was not alone in the galaxy, and something was coming for it. They called it the Koru, a species that lived in the dark edges of the galaxy. They conquered planets. They drained stars. They took what they wanted and left behind only silence. They had seen Earth, and now they were coming. But before Earth could react, before missiles could be launched or bunkers filled, the black ship moved. It left orbit, flew fast and straight toward deep space, to where the Koru ships were gathering. For 3 days nothing happened. The stars remained still. The ship was gone. No signals, no sounds, just silence. Then on the 4th day, a burst of light tore through the sky. Satellites picked up strange waves, flashes of something burning. Then quiet again. The black ship returned. This time it came closer. It hovered just above the moon, sending one last image, a single word in human code. Safe. And then it vanished. No one knew who piloted the ship. No one knew where it had come from. No one ever saw it land or crash. But Earth knew one thing. They had been saved. That was the day humanity began to remember. It became a moment taught in schools, told in stories, sung in songs. The day of the stranger, the one who came and protected, not for reward, not for power, but because they could. The world changed after that. Borders softened. Nations began to talk more, share more, work together. A quiet agreement. If they ever returned, if the stranger or their people ever needed help, humanity would answer. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. Earth grew strong. Faster ships, wider colonies, outposts on moons, cities floating above gas giants. Earth was no longer weak. They were no longer alone, but they never forgot the black ship. Then, on a quiet evening at Outpost Helio 7, a signal was received. It was soft, almost broken, buried under waves of cosmic dust. An engineer named Kale noticed it. She was cleaning an old comms channel. At first she thought it was a glitch, but then she saw the pattern, the pulse, the rhythm. It matched the signal from the black ship. The message was short. A location, a sound, and then silence. She took it to her captain. He took it to the council, and the council sent it to Earth. The room where they gathered was deep underground. Leaders, scientists, historians, all silent, all listening. The signal repeated. The sound was clearer now, like a voice, but not quite. Digital, old, worn. The translation came slowly. A name. Vale. It was the same name some scholars had guessed before. The name written in old data streams from the first encounter. The stranger had a name. And now, they were calling for help. Earth debated what to do. Some said ignore it. It could be a trick, a trap. Old ghosts trying to lure the fleet into danger. Others said it was their duty, a promise made long ago, that if the stranger ever called, they would answer. The president of Earth stood before them, her voice calm, clear, heavy with meaning. We were saved without being asked. Now we are asked, and we will go. The fleet was gathered, not for war, but for rescue. 10 ships, strong and fast, built for deep space. They were called the Ark of Honor. Each ship bore the same symbol, a black circle, a blue glow. the mark of the stranger. Pilots and scientists, engineers and historians, all chosen for their skill and heart. They trained for weeks, studied the signal, planned the path. The location was far, beyond known space, a place not on any map. They would have to use old drives, slingshot past dying stars, navigate through radiation fields. The journey would take weeks, but they were ready. Among the crew was a man named Riven, a pilot born on Mars, raised on stories of the Black Ship. He had always believed the tale, while others forgot. He remembered. As the fleet prepared to leave, Riven sat in his small cabin, looking at a tiny metal coin, passed down from his grandfather. It had a picture of the Black Ship on one side, and the word safe on the other. He smiled, not because he knew what was waiting, but because he believed in promises. On launch day, crowds gathered across Earth. Screens lit up across the colonies, all watching as the Ark of Honor rose from the blue oceans, climbing toward the stars. The engines roared, but the people were silent, watching, hoping, believing. Riven felt the pull of gravity fade. The stars grew sharper, colder, closer. The fleet formed a line, pointed toward the signal, and vanished into the void. But just as they left, Riven received a private message. A voice, soft, mechanical, old. It said only one thing. You're walking into something bigger than you can imagine. And then, silence again. The journey had begun, and Earth waited, holding its breath, hoping that in the moment of returning a favor, they would not lose what made them human. And far away, beyond dark stars, a broken world waited, a dying fire, a child asleep in crystal, a legacy almost lost, but not yet, because humanity was coming, and the galaxy was about to change, forever. The stars ahead were dim and cold. They shimmered like dying eyes in the vast dark. The fleet moved through silence, 10 ships gliding without fear. Each one held men and women who had trained for this moment. Some were scientists, some were soldiers, some were just dreamers, but they all carried the same mission, to answer a promise made long ago. Kale sat in the signal room of the lead ship, her eyes locked on the stream of data flowing through the screens. The signal was weak. It blinked like a tired heartbeat, but it was there, always there. It pulled her mind forward, pulled her heart into places she could not name. The code was unlike anything she had seen. It did not use human rhythm or logic. It twisted and bent through space, like a song made of gravity and light. Still, she listened. She waited. Riven moved through the hallways of the 4th ship. He walked past sleeping crew, past humming machines, past silent walls that had never seen war. His hand brushed the small coin in his pocket, the one with the word safe. He remembered the old stories, how one ship had saved Earth, how one being had stepped into the fire when no one else would. Now it was their turn. Now it was time to keep the promise. The ship slipped past the edge of the charted galaxy. No maps covered this place. No lights from home reached this far. They passed stars that burned red and slow. They passed dead planets without names. They passed wreckage that floated like forgotten bones. Long broken ships, some maybe older than Earth itself, others still glowing faintly with power they did not understand. The deeper they went, the stronger the signal became. It pulsed now, like a voice trying to speak through water. Sometimes it sounded like crying. Sometimes it sounded like music. Kale recorded every second. Then one day the signal changed. It grew sharper, clearer, more urgent. A shape appeared on the screens. Not words, not images, but a pattern, a spiral, turning inward, then out again. Kale called the captain. They gathered the crew in the central chamber. The image was shown to all. The room fell silent, not because of fear, but because every one of them had seen this shape before. It was the same spiral that had appeared in the first signal centuries ago, the one that warned of the Koru, the one sent by the Black Ship, by Vale. Now it had returned, and with it, a new message, a string of sounds, hard to decode, strange in form, but full of emotion. When the machines translated the meaning, Only one word came through. Help. The room stayed quiet. Heart slowed. Eyes widened. The captain stood, tall and calm. She looked at her people and spoke without doubt. We go. Engines flared. Lights dimmed. The fleet pushed deeper into the void. Toward the spiral. Toward the voice. They entered a region of broken light. Stars twisted in shape. Gravity bent the laws of sight. The air inside the ships felt thick, like they were passing through something more than dust. The lead ship found the source. A planet once full of life, now covered in ash and glass. Its sky was gray. Its oceans were gone. Mountains stood like black teeth. And above it, a station drifted, silent, empty, cracked like an egg. Kale led the landing team. She wore her suit like armor, not from fear of enemies, but from the weight of history. They stepped onto the ruined surface. Ash swirled at their feet. Structures rose around them, tall and thin, made from a metal that shimmered with faint blue. Signs of battle were everywhere. Scars in the earth, burns in the walls, half-buried machines that no longer moved. And then they found it, in the center of the tallest building, beneath layers of collapsed stone and twisted wires. A room still pulsed with power. Soft blue light glowed around a chamber. Inside it, a figure slept, small, still, surrounded by light and code. It was not human. Its skin was pale silver, its eyes closed, its body thin and fragile, like a sculpture carved from starlight. Kale stepped forward, her breath caught in her throat. The machines read its life signs, faint, but present. Riven stood beside her. He stared at the figure, and he knew. This was Vale's blood. This was the last of the ones who had saved Earth. They had found the air. They carried the being back to the ship. Carefully, gently, they placed it in the medical bay. Machines began to scan and stabilize its form. Kale stayed near, watching, waiting. The signal stopped. The moment they touched the chamber, the voice went silent. Only the soft hum of machines remained. Then a warning appeared on every screen. A wave of red light, spinning symbols, and a sound like a distant roar. The ship shook. Alarm screamed. Something had been watching. Something old. Something hidden. The Koru. They had returned. The enemy Earth had once feared. The ones who had vanished after Vale destroyed their fleet. They had not died. They had waited. And now, they were near. The captain called for all ships to prepare. Defensive shields rose. Weapons powered. Drones launched into the dark. Kale sat beside the sleeping being. She whispered words it could not hear. You saved us once. Now we will save you. Riven stood in the pilot seat. Hands ready. Eyes locked on the stars ahead. They did not know what was coming. But they were not afraid. Because this time, humanity was ready. And they would not fail. The spiral had called them. The past had returned. The stars had shifted. And the promise made long ago was about to be tested. In the silence. In the cold. In the dark where old wars slept and ancient voices whispered. Humanity stood as one. And the galaxy held its breath. The fleet drifted above the ruined world like silent watchers in a dark cathedral of stars. The ships floated in formation. 10 shadows outlined by blue glow. Each one listening, scanning, waiting. The surface below was dead. A gray planet once full of light and life, now turned to black dust and quiet echoes. Its cities were gone, crushed, burned, buried beneath layers of ash that never settled. The landing teams had returned with their discovery. The last of Vale's people, still breathing, still asleep, still untouched by time. Kale stood inside the medical chamber, her hands steady, her eyes locked on the being that lay before her. Its chest rose and fell slowly, each breath shallow but strong. It was not old, not broken. It looked young, too young to have lived through what happened here. She ran scans, watched numbers rise and fall. No match to any species known. Not human, not synthetic, not cloned. This life form carried traces of something else, something that shimmered outside of the known scale. They did not know the name, but they called it the air. The captain walked through the silent halls of the lead ship. She moved with purpose, her steps light but firm. Every crew member stepped aside. Not at once. They all knew what was at stake. They all felt the same weight. Above them, beyond them, the Koru moved. Their ships were old. Not dead. Not forgotten. Just hidden. Waiting in shadow. Built from black metal. Sharp edges. No beauty. Only function. Scouts from the Ark had seen them. Just for a moment. Shapes passing between dark stars. No response to messages. No signals returned. Only silence. And then the traps began. The second ship detected strange energy from a nearby moon. When they sent a drone, it vanished. No light. No trace. Just gone. The fifth ship found a tower on a small asteroid. The moment they scanned it, their systems began to fail. Lights flickered. Engines slowed. Their ship drifted for hours before they reset every circuit. Kale pieced the data together. It was clear. This was not a battlefield. It was a graveyard built to catch the living. The Koru had turned this whole system into a trap. Not for war, but for patience. And now, the bait had been touched. The air was awake. Not fully. Not yet. But the machines read higher signals. Brain waves rising. Faint pulses of energy passing through the walls. Kale stayed near. She spoke in whispers. Soft and steady. Telling the being who she was. Where they were. What had happened. Sometimes, the being twitched. Moved. Opened its eyes for a breath of a second. And then fell back into silence. Riven walked the halls with eyes wide open. He kept one hand near the emergency lever. He trusted the peace. But he did not believe in it. Too quiet. Too still. The calm before something worse than noise. Then the third ship sent a message. One word. Found. It repeated 3 times. Then silence. The captain ordered a scan. The screen showed a field of broken ships. Not human. Not Koru. Ancient. Dust-covered. Orbiting a frozen planet with no name. They sent a small crew. 6 trained scouts. Riven among them. The drop was fast. Rough. The wind cut like razors as they entered the thin air of the frozen world. They landed near the wreckage. The ships were massive. Tall like towers. Some bent into strange curves. Some torn open like paper. Symbols covered every surface. Glowing faintly. Not words. Not pictures. Just symbols that pulsed. Riven touched one. It felt warm. Alive. Then the air changed. A low hum began. Not from the wrecks, but from the sky above. They looked up. Shapes appeared. Dark. Fast. Moving like predators. The Koru. No warning. No time. Weapons fired from the human dropship. Red light cut through the wind. But the Koru vanished. Faster than thought. They struck from below. Burrowed through ice. Risen like ghosts. 2 scouts were taken. Screams cut short. Signals lost. Riven dragged one of the wounded back to the ship. His suit torn. Breath shallow. The captain heard the report. Her face did not change. Only her eyes grew colder. "We are not alone," she said. "We never were." She turned to the crew. She raised her voice. They watched this system fall. They killed its people. They left traps to bury its bones. And now, they will come for us. We do not run. We do not forget. She ordered all ships to form defense rings. Shields raised. Weapons armed. No attack yet. But it would come. Kale stayed with the air. The scans showed energy building in the chamber. The lights around the being pulsed in rhythm with the fleet's shields. Somehow, the air felt everything. When Kale touched the side of the chamber, a voice entered her mind. Not in words, not in sound, but in memory. A forest of blue leaves. A sky full of twin suns. Children laughing, running, and then, fire. The sky turned black. Ships fell like knives. The air burned. The memory vanished. Kale staggered back. Breath sharp. Eyes wide. The air opened its eyes. Not fully. Not steady. But aware. Its gaze met hers. No fear. No anger. Only sadness. Kale whispered, "We are here. We came." The air blinked once. then closed its eyes again. The machines flared. Energy levels rising. The chamber's walls shimmered. Kale called the captain. The air is responding, she said. It knows we are here. The captain did not smile, but her voice softened. Then we must not fail. She turned to the window, looked out into the void. The stars flickered. The traps had been found. The silence had broken. Something was coming. Riven stood ready in the hangar, his dropship prepared, his team waiting. The time for rescue had passed. Now came the time for defense. The promise had been answered, but the price had only begun. Earth had sent its best, not to conquer, but to protect, not for glory, but for honor. In the shadows beyond the system, the Koru prepared, their ships older than memory, their hatred colder than the void. But this time, they would face something new. Not fear, not weakness, but humanity. And this time, the stars would remember. In the dark that surrounded the system, something ancient had begun to stir. Not a sound broke the silence, yet the feeling of motion, of watching eyes, of distant breath, pressed into every hull of the human fleet. The Koru had returned. They had not been destroyed, only driven back, only forced to wait in the shadow between stars. For centuries they watched. They rebuilt. They planted seeds in broken systems, waiting for life to return, waiting for weakness, waiting for the child of their enemy to be found. And now, the child was awake. Kale stood by the chamber where the air lay resting. The machines hummed with new energy. Strange pulses ran through the floor, through the walls. Every light flickered in rhythm with the child's heartbeat. Kale could feel the change, not with her body, but deep inside her thoughts. The ship was listening. The ship was feeling. She placed her hand on the glass, and for one breath, saw fire, not from a weapon, not from war, but from something deeper, an energy so vast, so raw, that space itself had bent. She pulled her hand back, eyes wide, her voice shaking as she called the captain. The air is more than a child. Kale said, it is something else, something born from what saved us. The captain nodded once. She did not ask how Kale knew. Some things could not be measured in scans or numbers. She turned to the fleet, ordered all ships to prepare. The Koru had shown themselves, not with words, not with threats, but with movement. The stars shifted, one by one. Human satellites vanished. Drones stopped sending signals. Sensors picked up cold shapes, drifting in patterns that made no sense. Until it was clear. The Koru were building something. A wall of silence. A cage of gravity. An invisible prison to trap the fleet. Riven flew his ship through the outer ring. He saw debris floating like ice in black water. Broken hulls. Burned symbols. Old wrecks and new machines mixed together like bones in a tomb. His scanners picked up a shape. Long. Narrow. Hollow at first. Then full of heat. A weapon. Long asleep. Now waking. He turned back. But his engines stalled for a breath. Just long enough for a message to come through. A signal from the Koru. It was not in language. Not in sound. But in pain. Every system screamed. Lights burst. The air shimmered with static. Then silence. The engineers pulled him back aboard the main ship. His skin pale. His voice silent. But his eyes wide with fire. He saw something. Kale said. And now. He cannot forget it. The captain ordered the message decoded. But nothing made sense. Until the air spoke. Only two words. Ancient vengeance. The voice was soft. Not like air. Not like speech. But inside their minds. Deep and calm. Heavy with sorrow. The captain looked at the child. You know them, she said. The air blinked slowly. Then set an image into the room. A memory of a world of light, a city of tall towers and flowing rivers of crystal, where voices sang not in sound, but in waves of color and light. Then, fire. The sky cracked open. The ground shook. Ships fell like black rain. The Koru. They came not to conquer, but to erase. The child showed a group of beings, standing together, holding hands, sending one of their own to the stars. The black ship. The one that saved Earth. That was the last mission, the last hope, a plea for mercy, a gift of protection, so that one spark might survive. And now, the Koru had returned to finish what they started. The captain stood tall, her eyes fierce. She turned to the crew. "This is not just rescue," she said. "This is justice. We were saved once, not because we deserved it, but because someone believed we could be more. Now we must be more." She ordered the fleet to change position. They moved into a triangle. Shields up, weapons ready, drones released in every direction. Then the stars darkened. The Koru fleet revealed itself, not with light, not with sound, but with shape. Black ships like blades, moving without flame, without heat, only shadows. They formed a ring, 10 for each human ship. Perfect, calculated. The Koru did not speak. They did not demand surrender. They only moved. Slow, certain, final. Kale stood in the core of the ship, her hands on the console, the air beside her. She asked softly, "Can you help us?" The child looked at her, then at the screen, then back again. A glow formed in the chamber. The machines around them pulsed. Soft light spread through the floor, into the wires, into the ship, then into every ship in the fleet. Power levels spiked. Weapons charged without command. Shields grew stronger, faster, smarter. The air was giving, not orders, but memory, not control, but knowledge. Vale had once turned the tide. Now the child would light the flame again. Riven returned to the pilot's seat, his hands calm, his voice steady. "Let them come," he said, and they did. The Koru ships moved like a storm, fast, precise, without waste. They opened fire, beams of dark matter, spikes of gravity, fields that bent light. But the human ships held, not just with steel, but with memory. The shields bent, but did not break. The weapons fired, with new accuracy, with new speed. The air linked their minds, just enough, so they moved as one, saw as one, fought as one. The battle was chaos and silence. No explosions in the vacuum, only light, only motion. For hours it raged. Then something shifted. The air closed its eyes, and a wave of energy burst from the fleet. Not a weapon, not a shield, but a pulse of thought. It swept through the Koru ships, and they stopped, just for a moment, but long enough. The human fleet struck. One by one, the Koru ships cracked, split, fell into the dark. The rest fled, not because of fear, but because they saw something they had not expected. Unity, not forged by fear, but by promise. The battle ended. The fleet stood above the broken world, breathing, waiting. The air opened its eyes again, and smiled. Kale felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but with hope. The enemy had waited, but humanity had grown. The promise had been kept, and the war was not over. But this battle, this day, belonged to something greater. Not revenge, but return. Not power, but peace. And far in the deep, beyond maps, beyond charts, something ancient stirred again. Watching, learning, waiting for the day when humanity would not just defend, but lead. The stars were still burning above the broken system. Faint pulses of ancient light dancing across black space. The wrecks of Koru ships floated in silence, some torn apart, some adrift like dead memories. But the battle was not over. Not yet. The humans knew this was only the beginning. A test. A first move in something far greater than they had seen before. The fleet gathered near the ruined planet, their formation tight, shields still humming, weapons still charged. But behind the walls of metal and light, the hearts of the crew were quiet, the weight of what they had seen pressed against their thoughts. Kale walked through the medical wing. The air lay resting in the chamber of light, its skin now glowing with a soft shimmer, its breath deeper, its eyes closed but moving behind the lids, dreaming, remembering, becoming. She placed her hand on the glass once again. No visions came this time, no flashes of fire or memory, only warmth and peace. Riven stood at the edge of the command deck, looking through the wide window into the void, his hands behind his back, his eyes fixed on the floating shapes far in the distance. Not Koru ships, not wrecks, but signals, dozens of faint signals, blinking in strange patterns. He had seen this before, in the old stories, in the simulations they trained on. Not weapons, not enemies, but markers, Koru beacons. The captain stepped beside him. She said nothing, just watched. After a long silence, Riven turned his head. They are calling for more. She nodded once, then turned to the crew. Across the fleet, voices spoke. Orders moved like currents. Every ship braced for the next wave. But this time, they would not wait for it to come to them. The captain stood before the fleet. Her message sent to every screen, every station, every year. We are not here for conquest. We are not here to destroy. We are here to protect a promise made by someone who had no reason to help us, someone who stepped into fire for people they did not know. We were saved once, not because we were strong, but because we were believed in. Now we stand not just for ourselves, but for all who still believe in something better. We hold the line. The ships move together, leaving the orbit of the ruined world, following the signals, tracing the patterns left by the Koru beacons. The deeper they went, the colder it became, not in temperature, but in feeling. The stars grew farther apart, the darkness heavier, the weight of forgotten wars pressing into every scan. Then they found it, a station, larger than anything built by human hands, orbiting a dead star, its surface smooth, black, marked with sharp angles that bent the light around them. No movement, no heat, no signals, until they drew near. The air awoke again. Kale rushed to the chamber. The lights around the child pulsed faster. Its eyes opened, this time wide and full of light. Its voice came not in sound, but in thought. They are waiting. They know we are here. Kale asked, are they afraid? The air did not answer, only stared through the walls, through the ship, toward the dark. The fleet paused at the edge of the station's gravity well. Scans showed tunnels, chambers, weapons. Then a new signal emerged. A message from the Koru. Not in words, not in pictures, but in emotion, anger, fear, confusion, memory. They had not expected the child to survive. They had not planned for humanity to come. They had waited too long. Now the galaxy was watching. The captain read the signal with steady eyes, then gave the order. We go forward. Boarding ships launched toward the station. Kale joined the first team. Riven piloted the lead dropship. They entered through a massive broken gate. The air stale, heavy with dust that did not fall. Walls pulsed with faint energy, like something alive, but sleeping. As they moved deeper, they saw the truth. Rows of chambers, each holding something inside. Not machines, not weapons, but beings. Frozen, preserved, stored like objects. Some looked like the air, others did not. Species unknown, bodies never recorded in human databases. Vaults of silence, archives of extinction. The Koru had not only destroyed, they had collected, held onto what they had erased. Kale felt her heart sink. This was not war. This was something worse. A voice echoed in her mind. The air. They kept us. Not to study, not to honor, but to remind themselves they had power over memory. The lights began to shift. Red lines traced the halls. Doors began to close. Walls began to move. The station had awakened. Traps activated. Drones released from hidden chambers. Machines crawled from the floors. Thin and fast, shaped like blades and bone. The team fought with calm fire. Weapons fired. Shields held. But the machines kept coming. Riven flew the dropship down into the inner chamber, broke through a closing gate, picked up the team, flew them back through the shifting maze. Kale held the air close, even as the walls screamed around them. They barely escaped. The station burned behind them. The Koru had tried to destroy it all, to bury the evidence, but not before Kale copied the data, not before the air had seen. Back on the ship, the child stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by light, surrounded by silence. Then it spoke again. I remember now. Images flashed across every screen. The homeworld of the air, the attack, the fall, the promise. Then, a vision of something more. A place beyond the edge of the map. A place where survivors might still hide. Where others, like the air, might still sleep. The captain turned to the crew. You all saw it. You all know what we must do. She did not shout. She did not command. She simply said, we go. But this journey, this price, would not be simple. The galaxy would not stay silent. The Koru would not forgive this act. They would come again, in greater numbers, with greater force. The humans would not run. They had chosen this path. The price of a promise was never small. But some debts were worth everything. And now, humanity would carry that weight. Together, the fleet drifted beyond the forgotten station. The stars ahead were faint, barely visible behind fields of dust and drifting relics. Each ship carried scars now, burned marks along the hull, flickers in systems that once worked without fail. The crews inside moved slower, not from fear, but from weight, the kind of weight that settled into the bones after truth had been uncovered. The air stood tall now, no longer fragile, no longer faint. It walked the ship without fear, each step sending soft waves of energy through the floor. The lights responded to it. The ship's systems opened as if remembering the touch of something sacred. Kale followed close. She watched the way the crew looked at the child, some with awe, some with silent confusion, but none with doubt. The Council on Earth had seen the transmissions, the images from the Koru vault, the frozen species, the stolen history, the burning truth. And they gave only one answer. Continue. So the Ark of Honor pushed forward, following the last vision shared by the air. A path drawn through black space, marked by stars no longer named, toward a place beyond all maps. They passed through nebula clouds that shimmered like blood and gold. They passed systems where time itself seemed to slow. They passed signs of old battles, torn moons, split planets, signals still looping after 1,000 years. Then they arrived. A field of silence. Not broken ships. Not dust. But stillness itself. As if the void had chosen to hold its breath. In the center floated a structure. Round. Open like a flower of stone. Each petal the size of a continent. It did not spin. It did not blink. But it watched. The air stepped forward. Its voice clear in every ear. They are waiting. The captain gave the order. Shields up. Engines hot. Drones released. But no response came. The structure remained still. No signals. No weapons. No movement. Until the fleet entered its shadow. Then the void screamed. Ships blinked into existence from every direction. Black hulls shaped like razors. Engines silent. Weapons hot. The Koru had arrived. More than before. More than expected. Not just a patrol, not just a fleet, but an armada, hundreds of ships, layers of fire and shadow, a storm of metal and silence. The human fleet turned in formation. No fear, no retreat, only focus. Kale stood on the command bridge beside the air. The child raised its hand slowly, and the fleet responded. Weapons locked, shields surged, engines glowed blue and white. Then, fire. The stars disappeared under the light of war. Koru ships moved like smoke, twisting, turning, dodging beams and missiles with unnatural grace. But humanity had learned. Their ships did not fight alone. Each vessel linked by thought, by pulse, by the memory gifted by the air. Where one ship saw, all ships saw. Where one moved, all moved. The battle became a song, not of chaos, but of rhythm. Flowing between silence and light. Riven flew his fighter with hands steady. He dove between hulks, spun past beams, fired into blind spots only the shared mind could see. He heard Kale in his ear. Calm, precise. Each word matched with movement. But the Koru adapted. They launched fields of silence, waves that cut signals, clouds that broke the link. Ships drifted, lost for heartbeats. Alone again. Then the air stepped forward, its voice louder now. A single word sent across every mind. Remember. And the link returned. Stronger. Deeper. No longer digital. But something older. Something human. They moved again. Together. Each ship a hand. Each weapon a finger. Each crew a breath. The battle turned. Koru ships cracked. Spun. Exploded without sound. But the cost grew. The third human vessel took a direct hit. Its engine core split. Its light died. No time to save. Only a single message before the silence. Hold the line. The sixth ship collided with a Koru warship. A planned strike. Both gone. But the enemy shattered. The captain stood tall. Her voice never shook. Her hands never slowed. We are not just fighting for Earth, she said. We are fighting for every voice they tried to erase. The air reached out again. This time not to the ships, but to the structure. The puddles opened. Light spilled out. Not heat, not fire, but memory. Beings stepped forth. Tall. Strange. Some looked like myths. Others like shadows. All silent. The last survivors. Kept hidden. Protected by the old ones. Waiting for the call. The Koru paused. Just for a moment. And that was enough. The human fleet surged forward. A wave of fire and fury. Drones swarmed. Cannons roared. The structure shielded the survivors as the sky burned. The Koru fell back. They had lost the rhythm. They had lost the silence. They had lost control. In the final strike, the lead ship of the Koru Armada took a hit from 4 sides. Its shield cracked. Its hull opened. And something inside screamed into the void. Not rage, but fear. Then it was gone. Silence returned. The human ships stood among the wreckage. Drifting. Breathing. Kale sat beside the air. Her eyes wet. Her voice soft. You did it, she said. The child shook its head. We all did. The survivors floated near. Their eyes full of ancient sorrow. But also something else. Hope. The battle had shaken the void. Had lit the dark. Had reminded the stars that silence could not last forever. The air looked toward the distance. More will come, it said. But now, we are not alone. The stars above the battlefield no longer flickered in fear. They watched in quiet awe. As the dust began to settle. As the remains of ships drifted like forgotten memories. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of weight. Full of echoes. Full of a new name written across the darkness. Humanity. For the first time in recorded history, the Koru had fled. Not because they were weak. Not because they were unprepared. But because something had changed. They saw something in the humans that had not existed before. Not just strength. Not just courage. But unity. A kind of unity that came not from shared blood, but from shared purpose. A promise made long ago by a single being. Honored by a species that once looked at the stars with fear. Now they stood in the stars. And the stars remembered. The survivors from the structure floated gently among the fleet. Strange in shape. Beautiful in form. Each one carrying a story that had almost been lost forever. The air moved among them with calm grace. Its presence felt like a warm light in the cold of space. Kale stood beside the child, watching it speak without words. Sending memories instead of sentences, showing truths instead of telling them. The captain sent a message to Earth. It was not a report. It was not a victory speech. It was something more. It was history. She spoke of the battle, of the vaults, of the extinction the Koru had nearly completed. She spoke of the survivors, of the air, of the moment humanity decided to become more than protectors of their own world. Her words reached every city. Every outpost, every ship orbiting every moon. And the people listened, not with fear, but with wonder. Riven stood at the forward window of the lead ship. The stars reflected in his eyes. He thought of his grandfather, the stories told at bedtime, of a black ship, of a promise, of a day when humanity might be something greater. That day had come, but not all was over. Not all was safe. Far in the distant void, the Koru still moved, still watched, still planned. They would return. They would gather again. Their silence had been broken. but not ended. The air knew this. Kale knew this. The captain knew this. But now, they would not face it alone. The survivors offered knowledge, technology buried by time, maps of systems long hidden, doors to places beyond current understanding. They did not give these gifts because they had to. They gave them because they saw something in humanity. Not just potential, but memory. The memory of one who had once stood against destruction alone. Vale. The black ship had been a whisper, a myth, a symbol. Now it was a foundation. The monument was built in orbit above the ruined planet, its surface carved with every known language. At its center stood a statue, tall and strong, carved from obsidian, outlined with glowing blue. A figure not human, not quite alien, holding a hand toward the stars. At the base were words that needed no translation. To the one who believed in us before we believed in ourselves. The survivors placed their own signs beside it, symbols of their lost cultures, their hopes, their beginnings. The fleet stayed for days, repairing what they could, documenting everything, learning, sharing. The air spent long hours in silence, sometimes walking the empty halls of the human ships, sometimes standing still before wide windows, watching the stars. Kale asked once what it saw. The future. The child answered. And the weight of it. She asked if it was afraid. No, it said, because I am not alone anymore. When it finally returned to the chamber, it did not sleep. It merged with the systems, its thoughts a soft hum in the walls, its presence a calm rhythm beneath every footstep. The captain stood before her crew one last time. She looked into the eyes of every man and woman. She did not speak of medals. She did not speak of victory. She spoke of purpose. We came to repay a debt, and we did. But we found more than we expected. We found a cause worth carrying, a truth worth protecting. And now, we carry it not just for the air, not just for the survivors, but for all who were silenced. We remember. The fleet began its return. Not to Earth. Not yet. There were still voices to find. Still signs to uncover. Still places in the dark that needed light. Humanity had begun a journey without end. And as they moved through space, other species began to notice. Small transmissions appeared. Curious signals. Old languages. Questions sent into the void. Who are you? Where did you come from? Are you the ones who stood against the Koru? And humanity answered, not with pride, but with clarity. We are the children of Earth. We remember the one who helped us. We stand for those who cannot. We are not perfect, but we are present. And the galaxy listened. Some feared. Some reached out. Some watched in silence. But no one ignored them anymore. The child of Vale walked among stars once again. But now, it walked with friends. The monument remained in orbit. A beacon. A reminder. Not just of loss, but of choice. A choice made by a species that once saw itself as small. That once feared the sky. Now they lit the sky. And the day they repaid a favor was the day they became legend.